Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. This is Dan Turchin, host of AI and the Future of Work and CEO of People Rain, an AI platform for IT and HR employee service. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe to our newsletter at peoplerain.io/podcast. That's People Rain, like the reign of a king or queen, REIGN.io/podcast. And you'll get bonus content and insights from guests like the great ones that we have today. So we've got a special roundtable edition of the podcast today. We thought we'd bring you a little bit of a conversation related to a course that Barclay Rae, who's one of our special guests, and I taught a few weeks back. We've got one of our star students joining us as well. And just a little bit of context for the discussion. I know I've said it before on the show. I firmly believe work will change more in the next, say, 30 days than it has in probably the past 30 years. An astonishing 70% of employees, when polled recently, say they're actually scared to go back to the office. And that trend has serious implications for not just workplace culture, but also employee productivity. And so all of us in service roles where we're trying to deliver exceptional employee experiences have to take that into account, what the new world of work is like. Some of the cultural context surrounding the pandemic has really forced us to ask a new set of questions. What does it actually need to work? Does it need to be for a certain period of time, during certain hours, in a certain place, with certain tools? These are all pretty fundamental questions about work that we're now having to revisit. Today's guests have a unique perspective, having coached hundreds of organizations about how to make the best use of technology at work. I mentioned Barclay and I recently taught a course to IT leaders about the principles of AI. Sanjeev NC, who joins us today, was one of our most enthusiastic graduates. So we decided we'd invite him to have a conversation with us on the podcast. Sanjeev joins us from Chennai, India, where he was most recently in product marketing at a great company, if you've never heard it, called Freshworks. Barclay, as you know, is an accomplished author. He's been on the podcast before. He's also a consultant, and he's contributed to the ITIL version 4 guides. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Since it's June 2020 and we're right in the midst of the second COVID surge, why don't we start, maybe Sanjeev, with you. Tell us what it's like where you're quarantined and how the situation has affected your work life.
Hi, Dan. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm super happy to be here. The situation has been quite okay. I think I am kind of in a unique vantage point because I'm currently in between a break, not because of COVID. It's a decision that I made before that. So I'm not kind of experiencing the whole work from home situation and the remote thing. So that's one thing out of the way. But apart from that, things are quite good. It can obviously be better. I wish I could step out more, meet some friends, but that's out of the window. But yeah, I'm spending a lot of time indoors, playing a lot on my PlayStation, catching up on some reading, trying to pick up new skills like coding and video editing, just like a bunch of random things that I always want to do. So I think this has slightly been kind on me. So I'm grateful for that.
Barclay, you and I talk all the time, but same question to you. What has the pandemic done for your kind of work situation?
A mixed bag, really. I mean, I have been able to transition what I do quite easily because I effectively have always worked from home one way or another. Most of the actual work that I do tends to be out with clients, so that's been a real culture shock that I just can't go anywhere and I can't see clients, and that's actually impacted on my actual amount of work. It sort of comes back in sort of spurts and phases, and is no way restored anywhere near to what it was, but it's kind of getting better, I think. I am still finding, I mean, I'm quite old, so I mean, I'm used to the way that I work. From a positive point of view, I mean, it's been good because I've looked at a lot of things, the questions that we're going to talk about. How do we work? What is work? What does it mean? And so on. But it's also been quite challenging, I think, to miss out on the human interaction part, which for me is a huge part of particularly consulting, observing people, interacting with them, and so on. That's been a massive challenge. I haven't reread Shakespeare or anything like that, but I have managed to do the running project. I've gone couch to 5K, so that's something that's happened. But I look forward to it. It's difficult because there's no clear path. It's not as if it's like, well, by December everything will be changed. We don't know. What about you? I mean, what's it been like for you in California? How's that impacted on you?
Massive shift. So as a vendor helping customers along their AI journey, it's very different for us to not be able to interact face to face. So much of our process, so much of what I think creates value for our customers is the interactive workshops, which have all gone online, obviously, sessions where we introspect their data and together learn about what are the use cases, what are the good candidates for using AI in the context of IT and HR. I'd say it's been a lot of 3, 4, 5 a.m. webcasts. I don't miss the travel. And I'm finding that the enterprise community is doing a good job adapting how they learn about new solutions, new technologies, because it is the fact that as much of it as it's a cliche, necessity is the mother of invention. And so as a vendor community, as a customer community, we're relearning together things that we had learned over the past 30 years about how you sell, how you buy, how you learn, and finding that a lot of these digital tools, whether it's whiteboarding or interactive polling, offline sketch tools, things like that, we're having to adapt to them, and they're becoming more sufficient every day.
I suppose in some ways it's forcing us to use more data, isn't it? I mean, to try and act in a more data driven way, but by having to capture and analyze more data before we have a conversation or before we make a decision, whereas we might do that just by meeting people.
I think you can't just no longer walk into like a room where you can just sketch things out, make a decision, move out. So you really have to be mindful about the things you document, and because you're communicating asynchronously, you have to put in a lot more effort to capture all the details. So I think that's definitely making documentations better. If I'm kind of looking at the silver lining.
Sanjeev, you went through the course AI for IT leaders, the exec certification course. What were some of the takeaways? What are things that you might be able to use either in your own work situation as you find a new home, or as you're coaching other companies?
I took the course because, again, I came to know about it through Barclay, who I've been connected to for a while. So for me, a lot of the things that I learned from the course, the biggest value add for me was the way it was structured and packaged. Because a lot of talk on AI has been very theoretical and has, talked a lot about the models and a lot of the technical stuff, which I love. Like, I'm a technical person, but then I was really looking for things that I can, in the context of ITSM. So I think a lot of that is what I got out of the course that both of you ran. For me, the biggest takeaway has been the different use cases that I've learned, because me as a person, I'm always looking for what are the new things in IT that we can solve for, and how can we solve for old problems in new ways. And I think this kind of set me on the path where now I'm thinking really hard about, okay, I know AI and I know ITSM. I spent a lot of time in it, and the intersection has been really interesting, but I've not been able to tie them together until I spent that half a day with both of you, and kind of, you connected the dots really well for us. So that was really helpful.
So guys, a lot of the those listening in our audience are somewhere between intrigued, confused, maybe a little apprehensive about the role of AI in their future and how it might be used in their companies. Any specific examples or coaching that you have for them about what you've seen working out there?
In terms of, I think I've been thinking a lot about this between like our course and now. I think AI, because it's for some reason has been there's been a lot of hype around the word, and it can mean a lot of things, and it can also be applied in multiple places, right? For example, like self-driving cars mean AI, and there's a lot of other things where AI can be applied. So there's a lot of that kind of cloud carried over into our workplaces, and that kind of seems like, it makes it overwhelming. It makes it look like it's a huge thing, and it makes it look like, I can't, there's no time for it right now. I can't start it right now. It's a huge project and things like that. we need a mindset shift where we look at AI and we don't look at it as this huge thing that we have to deal with. It's to me, it's like any other tech, because tech has been evolving, and we've been moving from Excel sheets to kind of on-premise solutions to SaaS solutions, and we didn't look at all of that as like a huge thing. Moreover, it was like a natural evolution. I think we have to look at AI like that, and the tech and the infra and all the learnings that we need to apply are all around us. So I think we just don't have to be intimidated by it and just deal with it like all the other things that I've dealt with in the past.
For me, the challenge at the moment is just getting, getting simple, clear business messages, simple messages about specific examples of what the technology can do, and as you say, it's not a massive thing. I think the thing as well is that people think of it, well, we have to take all of it on ourselves. We have to confront the whole of it, whereas actually, for most people, it's something probably quite or very, very specific. I mean, I really like Dan's definition of, like it's not, it's not real intelligence, it's artificial intelligence. It's something where we're using technology to do something very, very specific that it can either do better or faster or cheaper or, in some way more efficiently than we can.
Yep.
It's not the robot wars, overlord invasion of the aliens that is associated with that. And I think the other thing as well is that there's a real need to get that message understood, sent and received and understood at different points in organizations, but particularly between senior people in IT and business people who need to either approve or engage or understand what's involved. Actually, recently I was with an organization, and the problem there wasn't that one or other didn't understand it, but they were both kind of waiting for the other to start it. The business was kind of going, well, yeah, we think we'd like to do this, but we probably need IT to do it with us. And the IT people guys were going, we know what we can do, but we're not sure whether they're interested. So I mean, as ever, it came down to a communication, people communication challenge. But I think that's certainly what I and Dan were really trying to do in that, and we've had feedback that it was just about getting some very specific but very clear and realistic message.
As you guys know from the course, our coaching for customers is don't label your initiative as AI-driven anything. Sanjeev, to your point, AI is a technology, and Barclay, to your point, is just based on finding patterns in data at scale. Think about it in terms of business benefits, and then it doesn't seem so exotic. So traditional service KPIs or key performance indicators are the way to think about how you'll measure the impact of your quote AI project. The big five being, is it going to reduce my mean time to resolve? Is it going to reduce my cost per ticket? Is it going to reduce my call volume? Is it going to increase my self-service adoption? Is it going to improve my customer sat scores? These are ways that as service organizations, we've always measured our progress. It's the same way to measure an initiative that happens to include this new technology called AI. It just creates this flywheel effect where you might be able to get 40 to 50% improvement in a year, whereas before you'd celebrate 3 to 5% improvement. So outsized gains, but ultimately it's not a technology project. It's really just a way to improve the user experience.
Exactly. So I would like to draw parallels with another topic that I'm passionate about, right? Gamification. And I feel gamification also faces the same issue where the word is kind of associated with meanings that it doesn't need to be. Like, games are for not for big companies, games are not for serious people. But then the moment you take that word out and do the exact same thing, you find people adopting, you find no resistance. I think the same thing with AI. The moment you lead with AI, to your point of, AI projects and AI driven initiative, you find a lot of unnecessary resistance that can be removed if you simply just go ahead and treat it like any other technology project. So it's a great point.
And we've always had that issue with IT service management, ITIL, and more recently DevOps. As soon as you label it as as a project or initiative based on those things, then you lose the focus of what it's trying to do from the business perspective, and you get all sorts of other hype associations and nonsense around, well, what's this going to, this is going to be a threat or a challenge. But essentially, we're talking about, a different level and a new level of technology, sure, but the same, as you say, there are no technology projects, there are business projects and transformation projects, and they will use different tools. Well, I mean, Dan, on the technology side that you're involved in, because I'm always interested in what sort of conversations actually happen between the sort of sales phase and the implementation phase. How do you counteract some of those challenges when you start to actually work with an organization?
The key thing is to focus on the end user experience and a specific problem that the organization is looking to solve. So I'll give you an example. Large government client of ours came to us with the problem that they have a high turnover in their call center. And because the turnover is high, they don't want to invest a lot in training the new agents. And so it turned out that the low customer sat and the high MTTR was because they had very raw agents that were in a pressure cooker environment. They were asked to resolve at least 10 tickets per day. They didn't have the right tools or the skills to do that. So it turns out that was a great opportunity to introduce adaptive learning using AI into the workflow for the service desk agents. So now it takes them about a day to get trained to do common tasks, whereas before it was taking about 2 weeks. And the reason is because in the case, it's actually a People Rain customer, so they're using an application called People Rain Recommend, which embeds in the task when they get a screen pop when a new caller is on the line. They actually get a screen pop showing a list of next best actions to take using AI based on the context of the interaction with the employee. So now that asynchronous hour, 2 hours, 5 hours of learning that the call center agent had to do now is done for them by AI. So it's using automation and using all of the context-rich answers locked up in their enterprise data sources and SharePoints and wikis and knowledge management and chat transcripts. It's now bringing that to the fore and embedding that right in the conversation. So it's an example of where, to Barclay's point, to talk about augmenting intelligence, nothing artificial about it. It's just making humans better. I think, in terms of the selling process, it's not selling. It's really just helping the customer identify a business problem that could be, alleviated with some smart technology.
I mean, that's an old challenge that, as soon as we started using abacus calculators and so on, is, do people still really understand what they're doing? And the fact is that, does it really matter? I mean, the only thing I would say, or, I'd be interested in opinions on this, would be, what do we think in terms of how much context people really need to know? How much business context do people need to know to really do the job that they're doing? Or, is that something that can be automated or given to them through tools, or do we still have a point where we go, no, we really need to understand this better. We need to in order to be really empathetic and to go the extra mile, we need something else. And
Sanjeev, what's your perspective? Curious to hear from your time in the trenches at Freshworks.
The way that I see it, right, most of the tech that we work with, especially IT teams work with, are all interconnected systems in the literal sense, right? Which means all of them are talking to each other and they're all just an API call away. So there is a lot of scope for things to be fully automated. And when I say fully automated, that means I'm a technician, I'm kind of working on my things. I'm walking out to get a coffee and come back and I see that a problem that I would have otherwise had to spend time on is automatically solved for me. And that is possible in most of the cases, but there are exceptions, right? Now there are times where I don't want a machine to take a decision for me and I want to kind of go in, assess the situation and figure it out. So I think Dave Snowden's framework is a really good way to measure or just way to assess things, right? In a simple system, I think it's okay, where we can trust AI or any other tech for that matter to kind of automate most of the things and remediate it. But let's say if you're dealing with a lot more complex systems where we really don't know what's going on inside, I think we really have to figure out and have checks and balances in place to ensure that we don't let the machines run away with everything, but then we are in place. We're trying to kind of regulate things.
So that's the Canafin framework, which has a number of different states, from chaos to an understood, a normal state where process works basically. I mean, the challenge of that, I think, is also how good we are when we're building these things at understanding those different states. Because again, if we tend to just dive in and think, well, everything is in the ordered state or everything's in the chaotic state, and being able to, I mean, I don't know how you approach this from the technology point of view again, but in terms of situational awareness, context, understanding,
Yeah.
in the technology, that to me is really important. I mean, that is one of the big benefits of a good human in a position. They can make a call on context quite quickly. Is that something that's more what we're doing with AI at the moment? Is it something that we need the self-driving car has to the driving bit's easy. It's the road and other cars is the challenge.
AI first projects have 3 phases. The first and most important is the one I talked about earlier, defining the business problem. The second, I know we covered this in the course in some detail as well, but the second key phase is identifying where the answers that would potentially solve that business problem live with respect to data sources. So this is the messy part of AI, but why I talk about it being more artificial and less intelligent some of the times, because it really is dependent on humans to have some context. It is highly dependent on process owners knowing where the answers might live and how to get at them. The algorithms actually just mine the typically historical content to establish patterns so that the third phase is effective. And the third phase is integrating that AI-defined model into the context of kind of the business workflow. It might be one or more application integrations, like in the simple example I gave of People Rain Recommend, embedding it in the task. So that task can come from any ITSM system, any ESM system, IT service management, enterprise service management. But the key thing is really defining the business problem, teasing out the data, getting access to the data to build the AI models, and then deploying them in a way that's scalable in the context of the business process. So kind of to points Barclay made, we want to make sure that the process drives the tools, that the tools don't drive the process. And I think that's one of the kind of reawakening moments that the enterprise community is having, is that using AI first technology, we can actually get to a point where the technology is so capable. It's so broad, but it's so capable that we can finally map technology to business process as opposed to the other way around.
And I'd just like to add something on the technology and the tools part specifically, right? Because I'm a firm believer that products and tools kind of drive human behavior, right? For example, all of us knew Kanban, but then Trello kind of came along and made it real. All of us knew Agile, and Atlassian came along and made it real. So the moment, let's say, a tool kind of ships with default best practices and default tech, and the tool kind of increases, and you get the tool in front of many people, and I think it slowly starts becoming a norm, right? So I think that's probably where, and Dan, you would agree that IT tool vendors have a role to play in making sure that we kind of simplify AI. We don't make it as massive and as huge as it sounds, and we kind of simplify it, and we get it in front of people, and we kind of take some responsibility to make sure that it's being adopted in the right way, and we kind of place it intelligently.
Yes, let's say you're approached by a junior IT practitioner, probably at a virtual event these days, and they say, this AI thing, it's coming out, it's coming after me. It's taking my job. I should just get my resume out there right now. What do you say to them?
I would probably ask them to turn back time a little bit, like when we moved from, let's say, an Excel sheet to an ERP system, right? That's probably way back. So maybe back then a lot of people are thinking, like, my job now involves kind of building out all these logic and algorithms that these tools say that they can do out of the box. And I'm sitting here and am I going to lose my job? Well, I don't really know if they did, but then I'm assuming they probably went on to manage the actual SAP systems or any other ERP systems, because at the end of the day, the tools are going to help them do their job better. The job is still theirs. Like, for example, let's say if we're introducing AI in an existing environment today, the AI knows nothing about the environment. Like, it's still the people. The tools know nothing about the environment. It's still the people. And I think the people are the key to making not just AI initiative, but any initiative more successful. And if you're smart, you'll realize that, hey, this can actually make my job easy. I have a lot more time on my hands right now to actually go and figure out what I need to do to kind of elevate myself in my job, or like learn new skills or whatever that I have to do. But if I'm gonna close my mind and be scared about it, I'm probably I've lost the game already. So yeah, I would probably tell them that listen, you have to be smart. You are at an advantage even with this, not especially with the situation, because you know more about the job that you're doing than anyone else.
So I think that's a really important point, because yes, absolutely, we need to get that message to people doing the job, but we also need to be really careful with it on the business side, that they've got a realistic view of what's going to happen there. They're not just suddenly going to go, oh, this is a way we can save money and cut jobs and cut costs and so on. It's just it's a way of reducing our overheads, as opposed to improving the quality of what we're doing, improving the level of maturity of what we're doing, and I suppose making it better for our businesses. And I think that's where, again, the kind of hype cycle has to be burst to stop it just being about, well, it's just about this and we can automate stuff, and that challenge, people are worried about their jobs. Okay, we'll actually, there's a job there for them. It's not just about that. It's about, well, actually, this is changing the way as an organization that we can work. And that's not necessarily just about being cheaper. I mean, I said better, faster, cheaper. Cheaper, definitely, almost certainly, but that's not the only thing. I mean, I don't know whether you come across that regularly, either of you, but it's a perception that's out there that we've got to just nip it in the bud, I think.
Guys, I know it feels like we're just getting started, but we only got a few more minutes, and I got to get this one last question in for both of you. So polish your crystal ball. Let's look out, call it 2 to 3 years, and AI is just kind of ambient. Kind of a lot of these things that we're talking about, just it kind of permeates the workplace. Pick one thing in the day of a life of a typical employee that you think will change as a result of AI becoming pervasive in the workplace.
I think for me, it's got to be just the way that they can get, and this is probably more from a management point of view, but the way that they can get better data, more reliable data, presented in a good way, that tells them what's happening. For me, the big challenge at the moment is still about governance, how we decide what we're going to do, and how we make decisions, and that they are not hype driven as well. So actually just having a much better visibility, transparency, understanding of what's going on, I think hopefully will help us to make better decisions.
I think for me, it's got to be automation, but then not the way that we think about it. So today's automation works like this, right? So I kind of go through the pain of doing a monotonous task, and I have to go set up a rule to automate it. So like with, let's say, AI kind of being or getting to where it will, I want to know what are the things that can be automated, and I want, based on my actions and based on the things that I've done, I want AI to tell me, okay, you're probably spending a lot of time on this that you don't need to. Here are ways in which you can automate it. So maybe I'm being idealistic, but then again, that's kind of how my mind works. But I think automation is really a kind of a use case where AI can start recommending, as opposed to letting humans figure out a rule that they have to go set by themselves.
Guys, as we get closer to that future, maybe we'll come back and we'll have the second version of this conversation. How's that sound?
Just one final thing. What's your vision, Dan?
So I think we often don't appreciate where those friction points occur, but I'll go through a couple. When I walk into a conference room, it's not smart today. It doesn't know who booked it, doesn't know how many people are in my meeting versus how many people it can fit. Doesn't know, maybe in post-COVID times, to circulate the air, or, it can't tell me whether or not it's been cleaned recently. These are all easy problems for AI to solve. When I have a visitor that's visiting me, let's assume we go back to an office at some point, smart decisions that AI can make are making sure based on my calendar that visitor can get into the building, or that if they need pre-approval, or if they need a temperature check, or if they need an immunity card to get into the building. These are all automated decisions that can reduce friction from the workplace. When I'm traveling, let's assume we do go back to travel at some point, I should have kind of an AI-based concierge that looks at what's on my calendar, understands my preferences, books me a car, makes sure my hotel reservation is confirmed. These are all data problems. This stuff is in my calendar. It's all contextual information. So it doesn't just live in a structured knowledge article, or an FAQ on a wiki. These are things that there's enough contextual information that when fed into an AI-first system or set of algorithms, these are decisions that would make my life as an employee so much better. That's the future work, is just all that kind of friction that stands between me and my productivity being eliminated.
I look forward to that, because so much of the day-to-day is sorting out that kind of stuff. Yeah.
No jobs eliminated, just a better future work for all of us. That's what I envision. So we'll have that chat in another couple quarters, maybe next year sometime. Hopefully we'll be looking at COVID in the rearview mirror and a bright future. Guys, this has been fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Enjoyed the roundtable. To all our listeners, please go and follow Sanjeev NC. He is Yenci, YENCEE, Sanjeev on Twitter. And follow Barclay as well. Barclay Rae, BARCLAY RAE. And again, if you enjoy the podcast, go to PeopleRain, REIGN.io/podcast, and subscribe to the newsletter, and you get special bonus content. That's a wrap for this week. Thanks to all for listening. We're back next week with another fascinating set of guests.